Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games Podcast. This is, I don't know what episode number this is. I didn't even think to look. It's 130 something. This is our deep dive format episode. So, my singular partner in crime tonight, Mr. SwissGuard, and I will be running down the thematically oriented news stories that we've selected from about another 30 news stories that we've been tracking for the past week. Tonight is going to be pretty business heavy, so get your Warren Buffett on, because we're going to be talking lots of dollars and cents, business deals, wheeling and dealing, and all sorts of things spinning around the gamerverse. At first blush, as I went over the news stories that we down selected for tonight's episode, I was kind of like, this is kind of ho-hum. But upon secondary review, I think there are some interesting pieces to pick at. As I mentioned, my co-host for tonight is Mr. SwissGuard. How you doing, Swiss?
Doing good. It's episode 128.
Thank you.
It's a nice round number.
yes.
For software guys. And it was ironically we had 28 stories on the slate to choose from. So
very cool. So first story at the top, and if you don't remember, our deep dive news show is a little bit different than just kind of the headline rundown or our newsapalooza that you normally get with most gaming podcasts. What we do is we track news stories throughout the week. As Swiss mentioned, we were tracking a total of 28 that we discussed throughout the week. Once we are in pre-production and heading into the show, what we try to do is we try and construct a slate based off of a common theme that we feel that we are seeing congeal around the gaming industry. So that's where we are tonight. And again, the primary theme tonight is financials, and surprisingly up financials, I think, is a more core theme. So first, at the top of tonight's program is, and Swiss, I changed the article a slight bit because I run an ad blocker, and the site that the news story that we had on the candidate slate went to a site that does not share its articles if you use an ad blocker, and I refuse to turn my ad blocker off.
I turned it off for the site, and I'll turn it back on after. But yeah, I'm a little bit more forgiving than you are. But yes, I also pretty much exclusively run with ad blockers.
So I'm reading, it's the same content roughly. I'm reading from actually the Next Web, and it's YouTube nabs Activision esports streaming deal from Twitch. So the opening block of the article, this is by Rachel Kaiser over at the Next Web. Quote, Activision revealed over the weekend that it had signed, very unusual use of a contraction in formal news reporting, but fine.
Yeah.
Activision revealed over the weekend that it had signed an exclusivity deal with Google, meaning YouTube will host the company's esports tourneys for the foreseeable future. Up to now, Activision's had a kind of another contraction. The world is coming to just complete ruin and despair.
You're so old.
Yep, I still write without contractions as much as I possibly can, unless I'm doing it for deliberate literary effect.
I don't write with contractions because I'm an android.
Except you just used I'm.
I turned my emotion chip on before the podcast.
Up to now, Activision's a great episode of Star Trek, by the way. We're already off the rails, by the way, is when they realize that Data is lore because he uses, because actually Will Wheaton's character actually realizes that he uses a contraction. Up to now, Activision's had a contract with Twitch, the major player in the streaming space. This could be a big feather in Google's heretofore underfed streaming game. And then it features a tweet by Ryan Wyatt, who it says is head of YouTube gaming, which I thought was no longer a thing, so I'm not sure exactly what Ryan Wyatt is in charge of. But fine, it's a tweet. Esports lives on at YouTube Gaming. Welcome to the family. And again, using a tweet for a service that Google told us doesn't exist anymore. Welcome to the family Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, and Hearthstone Esports. Let's get this thing going with the inaugural season of the Call of Duty League kicking off today, and then gives the URL for the Call of Duty League. These are three fairly big esports leagues. Overwatch, you've got Overwatch 2 coming out. Call of Duty is obviously just as big as ever. And I guess Hearthstone is a thing. It's not something that I really pay attention to. But the big story of the tape here is, what we saw last year was we saw the war for individual free agents in the streaming space and luring them from one service to another and signing exclusivity deals, even after Mixer grabbed Ninja and Shroud. Twitch then turned around and started signing some of its big streamers to its own exclusivity deals. I believe they nabbed up, I think, Dr. Lupo and Tim the Tatman and maybe Summit 1G in exclusivity deals. Now it's getting much bigger because while those individuals have their own big draw, these esports leagues have an even larger financial impact in terms of total numbers of eyeballs that are drawn, ads that are served out, and the total amount of time that those aggregate eyeballs spend consuming content on Twitch. Swiss, do you feel... So I guess one of my big things is, and I still struggle through this, even though I'm a streamer. I still struggle through this thing of going through a thing where streaming is separate from gaming and they are not necessarily synonymous. So, does this matter, do you think, in terms of games and the game industry? Or is this only important to streaming as its own discrete microeconomy?
I joke with you being old, but I am like one of these crotchety old men sitting on the porch and not understanding the Utes. And for me, competitive esports is not like a thing. I don't think about, man, I got to go watch Overwatch League or anything. So it's a little bit difficult for me to assess that, just because, like, I do not follow it. I don't, I'm not with in any communities that go along with it. You asked me about if the NFL signed an exclusivity deal with Amazon Prime or something. I'd be much more able, I think, to discuss the financial impact with that. But and compare it to ESPN or CBS. But
that's an interesting thread to head down, right? Because this is essentially the mirror of that, right? Essentially, the NFL signs, the NFC signs an exclusivity deal with a given television network for a period of time, and then it sometimes switches, and same thing for the AFC.
I think that with the AFC and the NFC, Fox has the NFC, CBS currently has the AFC. I think mostly it's just fans get crabby about which announcers they like or which announcers they like to hate on. With this, there might be some of that. I guess I hadn't even thought about it in terms of would Overwatch League viewers enjoy Ryan Wyatt? You know what I mean? Or is it... My thoughts initially turned to they're not going to care. I do know a few guys that were talking about Overwatch League. I have a family member who's super Blizzard guy, and he's into Overwatch League, and he was literally talking with his friends. I heard him talking about how they couldn't wait to watch the Dallas whoever's play the something or others, right? It just was completely outside the scope of my gaming interest, but it's a thing. I think they'll just migrate to where it has to go. And the reason why I find this a little bit more not more interesting, but more benign than the NFL is because anybody that does anything on the internet now, like we're used to having a multitude of services, right? I don't think anybody is a what's the term? Like there's we're not all ninja. We can't have exclusive. We're not getting paid to have exclusive deals. Like this is on Amazon Prime, I watch it there. This is on Netflix, I watch it there. I don't really care that it's like, oh man, I totally wish Stranger Things was on Amazon Prime rather than Netflix. Like I don't even think like that. And I feel like from a pure technological perspective, this isn't that big of a deal. The more interesting thing is what you kind of drew out of me is that we got to look at these more like a CBS and an ESPN, and would announcers or just like the pure presentation I don't know if like do these companies have like presentation capabilities? Is it like is this going to be a step up?
It's weird because as I say that, one of the key differences is, as we noted with the Blizzard thing last year, like the league has its own announcers. So those, as far as I understand, in most of those models, they won't change. So you'll still have yeah. So it's
this is really going to be benign then. Yeah.
So it's even more encapsulated than a Fox or a CBS. I think the only thing that will be interesting is what's the social dynamic of this. And there are aspects of it that I don't like, but these things are little neural networks of their own, right? So you have Twitch. People go to Twitch to watch streamers. They hang out with people in chat. They then hang out with those people in Discord. And then it just kind of revolves around. Now what you're going to have is you're going to have a group, and then your network, also then spreads over to Twitter and whatever other, social groups and areas you hang out on. Now it's going to be YouTube. Your usernames are different on YouTube in a lot of cases. Your identity, your brand, who you are as a user. I find for myself on Twitch, I generally have a better feeling of who people are. And the other differences are, one of the things on Twitch, and I think this is just a population number thing, is, when somebody follows me on Twitch or somebody hangs out in my chat for a long time, I'm generally able to kind of track down and find that person in terms of going to their Twitch channel, just because of the social norms, right? You go to their Twitch channel, if they are a streamer, and you first of all, you immediately figure out if they're a streamer or just a viewer. If they're a viewer, they'll have a Twitch page, but it won't have any information on it. But if they're a streamer, a typical thing on Twitch is to post all your social media links, right? So you can go to the person's page, you can then follow that to their other social media links, you can see what servers they're on Discord, and so you can, if a person gets into a lengthy conversation with you, you can start getting a sense and feel for who they are. On YouTube, when somebody shows up in chat, most people's YouTube channels are just a page where they are reposting links to other YouTube videos. So it's much more anonymized on YouTube, and I have much less of a sense for who people are. And so there's a little less sinew in just the people who kind of come through your chat. I wonder if that's how much of an impact that's going to have. My other thing is, when I go to YouTube to view a video and it's live, the first thing I do is figure out how to disable chat or make it disappear. Because whereas Twitch chats tend to be a little more engaging, I find YouTube chats to be pretty much useless. Like when we spend a lot of time doing E3 coverage by watching YouTube, like I just go on there and like try to immediately figure out how to disable the chat. Now I will say I tend to, if I have this correctly, when they multicast to both YouTube and Twitch, I do tend to go to the YouTube version because I can get the chat to go away, whereas I can't get the chat to go away on Twitch, I think. So I don't know. I mean, financially, it's, the money makes the world go round, and now this thing's going to be on YouTube. I think the other path that's interesting for me is, does this do anything? There's gotta be, I feel like there's gotta be a deal buried in here that isn't being surfaced yet that has something to do with Stadia.
I kind of jumped a little bit towards that just because you have Blizzard, whose bread and butter is currently World of. I mean, I guess these are all like over. I say bread and butter is World of Warcraft. It might be petering. I don't know if it's petering out comparatively. I think it's still a big money maker for them. None of these leagues are necessarily World of Warcraft. It's in and of itself, but my thoughts initially jumped to, you have World of Warcraft, which is the big MMORPG right now still, and Amazon's coming out with New World, I think, soon. It's kind of a big change, though, just to be like, we have a competitor putting a game out there that's, probably, it's not like a WoW clone or anything. That's one area I think where Amazon and Activision Blizzard would be in competition. So I think that might have had an effect, but having a Stadia like with some of these Activision properties on it is probably much more of a likelihood.
Yeah, and it seems like there are a lot of properties in that stable that would play well on Diablo 3, World of Warcraft. Again,
I just think of the Call of Duty guys. You know what I mean? They want to just, that's what they buy. They buy we kind of, I don't want to be condescending, but like, they get Madden and they get Call of Duty every year, and that's like the thing. So, a Stadia subscription is much more
cost effective, or
or it just aligns much more with their gaming habits than buying it off the shelf on a PlayStation every year.
Yeah, the problem will be the walled garden effect that you have on Stadia, where you're not playing. I mean, Call of Duty players are competitive, and they're not going to be able to right now. They're not going to be playing in the same pool. Now, then again, that could make a Call of Duty release on Stadia could make that attractive for a lot of people. I might be more willing to play Call of Duty, in public matches on Stadia if I wasn't with all the yahoos who are out playing, on the Activision servers where you have all the toxicity and all that. So, it'll be interesting. I'll be very interested to see if there's some very specific hooks into some back deal that like I said, hasn't been mentioned yet that involves YouTube or Stadia with those Activision properties. Moving on to the next financial story. One of my favorite topics is charts, game sale charts. And here on E2KG, man, if you've been listening for a while, then you know very well, we do pick up the stories for the UK charts because they tend to be precursors to what the US charts are going to indicate, and the sales data for the UK charts, for whatever reason, seems to cyclically be available sooner than US chart data. So over on GameIndustry.biz, in an article by Christopher Dring, UK charts, The Witcher 3 rises as Dragon Ball holds number 1. Meanwhile, Rugby 20, which is a very specific UK chart thing, makes the top 20. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? Kakarot? Kakarot. Okay. I knew Swiss would know the proper pronunciation of that one. Holds number 1 in the UK physical chart by just 400 units. The RPG beats out Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which remains at number 2, despite a 63% drop in sales week on week. January is quite even by January standards, and the only new release this week is Rugby 20 by Big Ben Interactive, which makes its debut at number 13. The game performed much better than its predecessor, managed as Rugby 18, released in it's all rugby stuff. Of course, November is a far busier release window, and where physical retail sales are typically far stronger. Even so, this latest game is sold around 20. All right, so nobody's buying a lot of rugby games in the U.S. The games in the list are Dragon Ball Z Kakarot at number 1, Call of Duty Modern Warfare at number 2, Grand Theft Auto 5 at number 3, FIFA 20 at 4, Just Dance 2020 at 5, followed by Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in the mid-pack. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order comes in at 7th. Minecraft is at 8th. Luigi's Mansion 3. I think that's the only Nintendo first-party title in the... no, there's 2.
Mario Kart.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yep. So 3. Luigi's Mansion 3. And rounding out the top 10, Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo Olympic Games 2020. Swiss, anything in that list or in the article that strikes you as surprising or something you wouldn't have expected?
No. I mean, I guess I'm a little surprised at how much success Dragon Ball Z RPG has had. I think a little bit of that is probably the time of year that it was released. It was, they chose a good open release window for it. But I don't know. It's just I've never really thought of Dragon Ball Z as like an RPG franchise. But
so I opened up by saying we look at this chart because it tends to track. There tend to be things that are similar to what the U.S. charts are going to say. There also tend to be some things that are exceptionally very, very, very British. I think Dragon Ball Z Kakarot being at number 1 is a very British demographic indicator.
I think we're going to see the same thing in the United States. Yeah.
Well, but
I think it's DBZ. I think it's because it's DBZ. So,
but have any of those DBZ games ever sold exceptionally well?
I mean, I think DBZ Fighters did pretty decently for.
Okay.
But
I guess what you were also saying is it may have gotten away with a fast one because it's out in a very soft time of the year where there's not anything else big.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying that it was I'm not saying that it was a bad game and it doesn't deserve to be number 1. It's just I don't think there's a lot of competition, so it kind of went to the top. And we got Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto 5. It's hard for me to think of Grand Theft Auto 5 as one of those games where it's like a Mario Kart 8. My family, we just got Mario Kart 8 a month or 2 ago. But it's one of those, like, if you have a Switch, pretty much anybody that has a Switch is probably going to get Mario Kart. So I can see it staying up there because there's people, like, that's going to be a game that is always tracking with Nintendo. The same with Minecraft. It's hard for me to see GTA 5 like that, but, obviously it is like that at this point. Like, you can't... People that play PlayStation or Xbox or PC, most are going to be getting GTA 5. It's interesting that it's still up there, and what's not up there is Red Dead Redemption 2, right? Luigi's Mansion 3, I probably would have thought a little bit that was surprising, but my wife has been playing it, and she's like telling me every day that I need to play it, and she's really into it right now.
And I know it's good. I just it catches me a little bit by surprise because I didn't think that had a hot sale shelf life much beyond the Halloween window.
Right, and I kind of agreed with you. I was like, they put it out then. It's kind of trying to capitalize on everybody's kind of mood at the time, but I think it's just a solid game in its own right. Mario and Sonic, I guess that's the one that's probably that and Just Dance 2020 are the biggest surprises to me. Like, I guess Just Dance is a thing. I've never played any of them. I don't know of them. But it's up there. Mario and Sonic, I would have thought it's a little bit early for Tokyo Olympic hype to be floating the game. That's kind of the way I look at that one.
No, and according to our own DBQ hams, right? I guess the knock-on effect of Mario and Sonic is it's a fun kind of party game or limited number multiplayer game. I guess in a time where there weren't a ton of like big multiplayer games out on not couch co-op multiplayer games out on the Switch, and you have it, and this is a list that reflects the turn of the corner, coming through the Christmas season and into the start of the new year. So, and you have a ton of Switches being sold.
Yeah.
we didn't pull any of those articles for tonight, but I think the hardware sales numbers were like that they recently crested 52 million. There was another article that I think just came out today, maybe, that indicates that 1 in every 3 Nintendo Switches being sold is a Switch Lite. So you have a lot of people.
Oh, I didn't see that article. That's surprising.
Yeah, so you have you still have the Switch selling like hotcakes. You have a lot of people buying the most portable SKU of the portable console. And obviously, as you mentioned, right? You're not going to have a Switch and not have Mario Kart 8, right? Even though it's not like a new Mario Kart, it's a thing that you buy when you buy the Switch. If you're taking it on the go, I know one of my big things is I like those deep single player experiences like Super Mario Odyssey is a great thing to take in the Switch on the go when you're going on travel, because you can take it and it's going to provide you hours and hours. You're not going to run out of Super Mario Odyssey, right, on a road trip or on a business trip. And kind of same thing with Luigi's Mansion, right? It's a big, deep campaign and you can kind of get lost in it and play it for a few hours. Mario and Sonic, again, when you do have the Switch at home and you do have it in the dock, it's something that you can get some healthy couch co-op out of with family members or a buddy who comes over. So I guess those kind of track. To me, the Dragon Ball Z is still kind of a surprise. But the tail of the tape here is there's nothing really. Nothing has dropped yet in 2020. All of these are kind of vestigial releases that people are still purchasing from the tail end of the 2019 season. I think the thing that's, if not surprising, mildly disappointing is that they're, part of the whole point of the VGAs, the Video Game Awards, is to hope to spike sales for games that come through and are featured. And so it's unfortunate that games like Control and Sekiro, who were, highly ballyhooed during the I guess I can call it now the gaming award season, wound up not making this list, unfortunately.
I can understand Sekiro a little bit because, that those types of games, they're not for everybody. Control, that is a surprising one. And it's not just it's not like Control sold like hotcakes when it was released back in August or whenever it was either. So it is kind of a shame about that game.
And we also have this list only going down to the top 10, but there are comments in here about things that were just out of the top 10, such as The The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The Witcher is a huge success story and a weird social dynamic at the tail end of 2019. I'm personally a fan of Henry Cavill, so good on him. A good project that he jumped on board with, and I love the fact that he's falling into a role that he can embrace, and that is carrying his name and visage being associated with that brand and its popularization is a pretty awesome thing. So I think that will do it. That'll do it for the sales numbers. I'm not picking out anything else in here. 3DS titles are still being sold, which I'm kind of surprised. There were a number of 3DS titles that were just out of the top 10. One at number 18. And I guess one much further down at number 28, but still up there. Still surprising that 3DS titles are still knocking on the door of being in the top 10. Next thing in our rundown, and actually I'm gonna skip over a little bit out of order to. Actually, it's not out of order. The next story is another GameIndustry.biz article. U.S. game content revenues hit $35.4 billion in 2019, say NPD and ESA. Overall spending on gaming similar to last year when omitting hardware revenues from the equation. This is an article by Brendan Sinclair. Did the U.S. gaming industry grow or shrink in 2019? It depends on how you look at it. The Entertainment Software Association today announced that revenues from U.S. gaming content totaled $35.4 billion in 2019, up 2% year over year, citing its own data as well as that of the NPD group for the number. The figure accounts for all software and in-game purchases, including those on U.S. mobile games. So it goes through and talks about it a little bit more. The tail of the tape here, the nit for me, is this topic of hardware. There's a lot of finagling around here about the difference in the total technical number of calendar weeks. I think because of the result of there being like an additional half week in 2018 because of what day of the week January 1st fell on. But I think at the end of the day, I don't even think that it really matters. I mean, at the end of the day, what the walkaway was that NPD reported hardware sales down 22% for the year, even when taking into account the longer tracking period of 2018, while peripherals and game cards category was down 7% year over year. So as far as I can tell, the key thing to extract from this article is software pretty much stable and steady year over year. Hardware sales down. Anything of that nature that pops out at you, Swiss?
No, because not too much. Because as far as like the 53-week period or 52 and a half versus 52, it's like, okay, it's either 2% more or 1% less depending on how you massage it. To me, that's consistent. It's not like we have a 5 or 10% drop. Where we do have the drop is in hardware sales, but again, that makes sense. I mean, everybody knows 2020 is when we're getting the next gen is coming out. So like, there's not going to be a lot of PS4s and Xboxes sold. I mean, we have a lot of Switches being sold, but I can, the Switch can't hold up all the hardware sale numbers. The one thing that is a little bit intriguing for me is the peripherals and game cards category. Okay, so do they just mean game cards as in like physical, like define game cards? Like, what do you think their definition of that is?
Yeah, I think in the past, if we talk about legacy technologies, I think this would have been like memory cards.
That's exactly what I thought of at first. I'm like, wait, I haven't had a memory card since the PS2,
right.
So.
The only thing I can think of, right? I think at the end of the day, this is just peripherals. So, so it's anything that's an add-on to the console. And I thought there was something specific in the article that talked about console add-ons. But
well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, what kind of peripherals are really out there? I mean, with the Switch, what can you really get in addition to the Switch and like some Joy-Cons? You get Pro controllers. Does that count, or is that hardware sale?
No, I think that's definitely. I mean, I think this is. So first of all, I mean, my takeaway from it is this is all part of the larger overall hardware number. I think that the peripherals and game cards are a specific decomposition down within that hardware number that they can break out from consoles. But at the end of the day, so I read it as overall hardware sales are down 22%. Within that, there's a subcategory of peripherals and game cards that was specifically down 7%. And I think that is interesting in terms of, so first of all, to me, if Switch sales are up, right, while overall hardware sales are down, that means to me PlayStation, I mean, somebody's losing, right? Like if you're gaining while the overall market is depressed, then that's got to be at somebody else's expense. And probably clearly that's more, probably more of that burden is carried by Microsoft, unfortunately.
I don't know if I 100% agree with that premise, but go on.
Okay. And then what's interesting to me is, again, if hardware sales are down 22%, peripherals and game cards are only down 7%, peripherals seem to not carry equivalent burden as console sales themselves. So that seems to indicate that while people went softer on consoles, they were still buying peripherals at a higher rate than they would overall in terms of console sales. So, which to me makes sense because we did get, well, at least on the Microsoft side, we got the word this year that all your peripherals should be relatively compatible. So, being being where the Xbox is in its service life, I mean, I definitely hit the point this year where I had to look at buying, replacement controllers and replacement play and charge kits and things like that. I had no hesitation about buying that because I know all that stuff is going to be forward compatible with the next version of the Xbox. Whereas PlayStation stuff, I tend to not buy unless it gets packed in with something else. Like I got another controller when I bought my PlayStation 4 Pro, and I bought another controller along with it. But in general, because PlayStation has a very bad tendency for things to not be forward compatible with the next generation console, I didn't spend a lot of money buying PlayStation 4 stuff this year. So,
I guess it doesn't bother me as much. Well, bothers the wrong word. It's not bothering you. It doesn't intrigue me as much that Nintendo is up while the rest is down, because I feel like Nintendo is everybody's second console. It's the primary console for a segment of the population. For a vast majority of gamers, it is their secondary console. And I don't mean that in like they play it less. It's just like people tend to get like an Xbox or a PlayStation and a Nintendo. It's agnostic in that way. So yes. I can see it staying up there, and it's not really that like a competition in a way. It's just like people know that the Xbox and the PlayStation are going away.
Yeah, and you have the whole seesaw. I mean, the other problem is Nintendo. I mean, I lump the Switch in with the same console generation as the I forget what the term is, but as the equivocal PlayStation and Xbox hardware SKU. But the reality is, the Switch and the Wii U and the Wii have released. Well, not the Wii, but Wii U and Switch released at like the half generation point. So naturally, people wouldn't be buying Xboxes and PS4s as if they were new, whereas people are buying the Switch as if it's still something relatively new. Right.
And the reason why I kind of pulled the peripherals out is it's like you said, even though the console generation is winding down, people are still going to need peripherals to work with it. So it's a little bit interesting, but then again, like you said, if a lot of people get most of their peripherals when they're buying the actual hardware anyway, I can see regular hardware console sales pulling the peripherals down. There's a part of me that wanted to read into that a little bit, like, oh, is there something going on with like third-party peripheral companies? But I feel like it's explainable given where we're at in the generation.
No, what I would read into it though is that there's also this additional effect this generation where this is a generation where all of those peripherals and especially controllers are compatible with far more than just their native consoles. So people are buying Xbox controllers and PlayStation controllers and the Nintendo Pro controller to use with Stadia, their NVIDIA Shields. Their iPads is a very big deal, and their Android phones is a very big deal. And I'm a big mobile device user, and previously in another life, covered mobile games and mobile gaming. Like it was Dante's Inferno, right? What we lived in for the first few years of like the iPad and Android tablets and really the iPhone and Android phones, dealing with pairing a flipping controller with those devices, as big and popular as they were as gaming devices. Like, it was just a wild west in terms of controller compatibility. Like, this year, the PlayStation 4, the DualShock 4, and the Xbox controller finally being adopted by those platforms in their operating systems in iOS and Android, accommodating those peripherals, like, just entirely changes the landscape of gaming. And the notion that, now when I go on travel, I can take I can take my Switch, I can take my iPad and an Android and my Razer phone, and I can take one controller, and utilize across all of them. That's an amazing quality of life in comparison to like all the junk that I used to pack in my little ditty bag to enable, gaming on the go. So that's huge, and I would think that would, have a positive impact or reduce the degree of negative impact in that peripheral subcategory. So interesting numbers, interesting picture being painted by the statistics. Our final article in tonight's thematic fondue is over on Game of Sutra. Analyst Nintendo passes $1 billion revenue on mobile, largely thanks to Fire Emblem. This article by Alyssa McAloon. Hopefully I pronounced her name correctly. According to data gleaned by mobile analyst Sensor Tower, Nintendo has officially crossed $1 billion in revenue generated on mobile, a platform it really only started to embrace a little over 3 years back. The firm estimates that 61% of that $1 billion was generated by the free-to-play gacha game Fire Emblem Heroes, a longtime leader of the company's mobile catalog by both Nintendo and third-party analysts' prior admissions. Swiss, we've talked a lot about Nintendo. In a positive light tonight, anything about this that jumps out at you?
Just the money involved. I mean, I'm not a mobile gamer, and when I think Nintendo, I don't think about all their mobile titles are an afterthought to me. So when it comes back and it's like $656 million for Fire Emblem Heroes, $131 million for Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, Dragalia Lost, which is their mobile only IP, $123 million. And it's just like, I can't. This is the one that's the most surprising story for me that we're doing it. It's hard for me to fathom they're making that much money on that platform. And I guess just because I don't know. I'm not a mobile gamer, and perhaps like maybe it's a little bit alarming to me that I'm missing this whole massive segment of the industry, and maybe I'm a snob. I don't know. I'm having kind of like an existential crisis.
Well, it's weird, and I guess I wish we'd unfortunately been able to have DBQ or Prime on because they both play these mobile games. Now, I do a little mobile gaming now, but I do not play Nintendo titles, and it's been a weird, traversal of a journey, because I was definitely one of the people that before the Switch came out, I was like, why is Nintendo being not smart about this, and why are they not, like, they have suffered at the hands of mobile, because mobile technology is the one that abuts most closely up against the Nintendo technology stack, right? In terms of, they tend to use lower performing hardware, and they've been the ones who have been, who mobile technology has closed the gap on most over the last couple of console generations. And I'm like, I don't understand why they don't put their IPs on mobile. They finally started putting their IPs on mobile. But then they released the Switch. And when they did that, I was like, I'm not going to bother to play Nintendo properties on mobile when there's the Switch and I can play it there. So I guess one of my questions for you is, do you think, now there's a couple things, like there's no new Animal Crossing to play for fans of Animal Crossing except to play on mobile.
I mean, it's coming.
Yes, right, yes. But Animal Crossing came out, 2017? Animal Crossing on mobile came out in 2017?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Right.
I'm thinking.
So that's been there, and that makes sense. But across the others, one of my questions is, do you think people play Nintendo mobile games who do not have a Switch yet?
Are we defining... this article doesn't mention Pokemon Go. That, you can define that as a Nintendo game, and I would say 100% people are playing that don't normally play. I don't think that your average mobile-only gamer is probably even aware of Fire Emblem. You know what I mean? That's a very... In a way, it's a very niche Nintendo title. Fire Emblem Heroes, good sales notwithstanding. In the United States, Fire Emblem hasn't been that big of a thing. The biggest Fire Emblem game I think that was really here before Heroes was Awakening and as a 3DS title. So
yeah, a lot more awareness finally this year with Three Houses. Again, mostly because of its prevalence during the different awards. So,
sorry, I hope I wasn't saying Heroes the whole time.
So are you saying that you think that people playing Fire Emblem Heroes? Now again, this is, I guess, one of the things that I'm just hitting on now is this is also global. So again, a good chance that maybe the people who are playing these games who live in countries where literally everyone has a cell phone, but not as many may be able to afford a Switch. I can see that demographic.
I think that people like to play mobile games on the go. They like to have some games on their phone, and Nintendo fans are going to pick up Nintendo IPs. Is what I think it really boils down to. I don't really view it as like I think there's probably a very broad overlap. Mario, maybe there's going to be some Mario only people that, because they remember Mario from back in the day when they were kids or something, or younger, young adults, whatever. They don't have a console now, but they liked Mario, so they okay, I'll grab it on my phone. I can't see that as much with Fire Emblem, but
yeah, because I mean, I struggle to think of gamers who have access to hardware and could be playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, playing a lot of Fire Emblem Heroes. And
it's just you can't take your Switch everywhere. I mean,
That's true.
If you're sitting in the doctor's office or whatever, and if you think ahead, maybe you take your Switch. But if you're, a parent or something, with young kids, you're like, I'm not going to take my Switch to, the doctor's office and be playing that while I have to watch my kid. But you can be sitting there with your baby in one arm and your cell phone in the other, and do a little bit towards what with the format of these mobile games. Like you can jump in for 60 seconds and jump out again, right? A lot of these. So
you can actually see a dynamic where the availability of the Switch and the availability of Nintendo IP on mobile could actually be complementary and actually somewhat of a catalyst to the uptake of these mobile games, because it's just more Nintendo IP being pushed into the forefront.
Yeah, that's the key. It's Nintendo intellectual. Yeah, it's Nintendo IP. And if you look, one of the big things in the game is like the top earner Fire Emblem Heroes says only claims 4% of their mobile downloads, but boasts an average revenue per download of $41. So
yeah, but all your
maybe that undermines my argument, because of I would say that makes somebody like I don't know. Do you think that's just a person that's like a whale that's addicted, or do you think that's like a uber Fire Emblem fan?
Well,
person?
yeah, I think it actually, I think it couples with your argument and extends it in that there aren't casuals. Nobody's casually picking up Fire Emblem, right? The people who are picking up and sticking with it are the people who are Fire Emblem fans, and those fans spend money. And I think that's a good way. I don't think of it in the negative connotation of like the big Fortnite spenders or the type of whales who play a game and need to be seen with everything, right? I think these are people who actually care about the IP and believe in the thought of like, hey, pay your developers, right? If you want more Fire Emblem, right? Pay a fair price for the content that you're consuming. So,
I was about to argue that, yeah, but you don't do that with like a company like Nintendo. And I'm the guy that was, and then I immediately jumped to, oh no, I had to pay Square Enix so that they produce more games like Octopath Traveler. Like, I mean, I got to vote with my dollars here a little bit. So, yeah, I nuked my own argument before it came out of my mouth.
All right. Well, I think that's all I had for tonight. Was there anything else that you wanted to go over from either the news stories that we went through or any that maybe didn't make the cut or the slate?
There was one that I had kind of linked to this one with Nintendo making all this money with Fire Emblem and their mobile stuff. There was a story that came out that I forget the developer's name. They make Torchlight, and they had announced Torchlight Frontiers, which is much more of a microtransaction-based take on the Torchlight franchise. And they were like, as they were designing the game, they're like, no, we really can't twist the game into that direction, and we're going to just make it Torchlight 3, and they're not really going the microtransaction route, which crotchety gamer on the porch guy me appreciated, but was interesting in that, like, everything in the industry is moving towards microtransactions. It feels like, I mean, I guess there's been a little bit of a pullback lately, but it feels like everything's going in that direction in the industry, and they decided, you know what, we're just going to try to make the game that we want to make, and I found that a little bit refreshing.
Yeah, overall good news story. You know, my understanding is a lot of that came from feedback from their alpha tester group. And so there's notable pieces of just kind of like, as you mentioned, like the industry and the business and how it's evolving. I found as a software developer, as a software engineer, and you're a software developer, you know, I found the most interesting part of that story was about the essence of discovery and creativity, right? And is that is, you know, you can have a blueprint in your head, you know, and I've written on the web, you know, I do videos, I've, you know, shot a short film, and I can definitely say from the short film aspect, and maybe even more so from architecting new software solutions for specific problems. You have a blueprint in your head. You think you know how it's going to go, but what you can't detect and what you can't predict is all the collisions that happen with other human beings in the creative space, and typically what you will, you know, where you'll end is somewhere different than where you thought you were going, and it's this wonderful dynamic of the emergence in the crucible of creativity, and I thought that was, you know, what was
that they were willing to allow that to
let the game find itself, you know, in some ways, you know, you can, well, and it's counter to, as you mentioned, what I think we're seeing in the industry in a lot of cases, which is, here are the creatives over here crafting a thing, and as they're sculpting away layers of clay, it's heading in a direction. But then another group of people, you know, and I could very easily wave my hand and say it's the financials and the bean counters and, you know, and the marketing guys, right, who come over and say, this thing is heading in that direction, but we don't care. Make it a microtransaction thing, right? So yeah, it was an interesting story to hear, and you know, it's good for those guys that they have that level of control. The unfortunate thing is there are lots of creatives. And maybe part of the walk away from this story too is, you know, before, you know, we made our mention during the our gaming superlatives of how, in my opinion, how horrible gamers acted, you know, in 2019. One of the things to think about is, you know, you have all of these creatives are the same in general. Maybe not the guys at DICE, but, you know, in general, all these creatives are in the space trying to create a game that they're trying to make a beautiful, wondrous thing. Not all of them have the freedom and latitude of control to allow the game to discover itself and make the choices that are entirely bound solely by creativity. Some of them have to answer to higher levels of a chain of command, right? And so, but what we always do is we always come back at the developers, because the developers are the ones being transparent and putting themselves out there and are on Reddit and Reset Era and NeoGAF. Like, find the marketing guy's Twitter account, right? Find the corporate executive's Twitter account, right? Give them the grief, because they're the one making those decisions, right? The guy who's deciding, you know, that, you know, whether he wants to put in 4K assets and HDR and going through crunch, he's not the guy making the decision about whether or not, you know, your hat is going to be a microtransaction or whether you're just going to get it for free. So
yeah, you as you were saying that, I just started to picture like all these the Dilbert strips in my head where you know, the pointy-haired boss or the marketing guy comes to Dilbert and says, well, we promised the customer this, so give them that. And it's like, but that's, defies physics or, whatever. And they're, whatever, just, and, so, yeah, that's life, I guess. But yeah, that would be the other story, I think, that didn't make it.
No, that's a good one. I appreciate you bringing that one up. Well, everyone else, thanks so much for joining in for yet another episode of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games Podcast. This has been episode number 128, recorded this evening, Thursday, the 30th of January, in this year of our gaming 2020. We will be back, I hope and believe, next week with either a GX show or doing our Decade in Review. It's a little tenuous. We may push it off and just do a GX episode next week. We will just have to wait and see. On behalf of the E2KG Network and SwissGuard and myself, Agasicles and SwissGuard, thanks so much for joining in tonight. Until next time, happy hunting, take care of yourselves, stay safe out there, play the games that you like, and come here to discuss the games that you love. That's going to do it for us. Good night, good luck, and good gaming. We're out of here.